Okay, once again, welcome to our channel. In our last video, we talked about Brexit, whether it was a wise or a dumb idea. It was a plan to continue with the pros and cons of Brexit and the changes that are occurring for European travelers and the new visa system for the UK getting into Europe, and also the system in Europe also that is affecting UK travelers entering the EU zone. So this will be the ETA and the ETAIS. The ETA being the new UK visa application system to get into Europe, which is sort of around about £12 and can be done online. And the ETAIS, which is the biometric scan of the eyes and fingerprints of UK residents entering the European Union zone. But today we have a more important subject, which is stamp duty land tax, which you normally see if you're purchasing a property in the UK. It will be in the narrative as SDLT. So we are basically taking a little bit of a break from the Brexit issue to just quickly do this stamp duty changes for April 2025, which is going to affect a lot of people, i.e. first-time buyers in the UK. It's also going to affect additional property owners being second-time ownership. Yes, so this is going to affect all of us in one way or the other. And this is why it is necessary to basically get on and do this video to explain what is really happening with stamp duty land tax taking effect from April 2025. Now, this is all public information, can be found on the government website, so this is nothing new, but it's just to talk through it and, just to engage you, and also if you don't know what is going on, then you could once again also get onto the government website and read these things. Now, there is always that common knowledge in the UK that when there is a Labour government, that it does favor people that are on low income or people that are trying to make ends meet, hence the name Labour being mostly for the working class and working people. So there is that assumption, and I think it's a myth, that Labour governments tend to take care of the slightly more disadvantaged in society. In reality, we have seen these changes come through. It's as if property prices is not expensive already in itself, and obviously with the rising interest rates, rising cost of living, stagnant incomes, it is almost impossible for anybody to get on the property ladder, especially younger people, just because house prices have skyrocketed in the past 10 to 15 years. So just to give you some perspective, a typical 3-bedroom house in London will easily cost you 580 to 650,000 pounds. I personally saw a property in an area. It's a decent area, but in all fairness, this property was more like one of those ex-council properties. It was 3-bedroom and it was going for 650,000 pounds, to my surprise. Now, as a first-time buyer, what sort of incomes do you need to be able to raise that 10% deposit and even be considered for a mortgage? So, for example, if there was anybody buying this £650,000 property, they would person have to be earning around about 120 to 150,000 pounds to be able to gain that income multiplier to get a mortgage for this type of a property. So it's as if life is not hard enough. This Labour government under Sir Keir Starmer, they've basically come in with these sweeping changes for stamp duty rates from April 2025. The reality and the effect of these changes are that only rich people now are going to be able to afford purchasing properties. One will say tough to first-time buyers and just people that are trying to make ends meet and trying to purchase a property. So as you can see here, as I said, all this information you can find on government website. So we say stamp duty land tax, which will reflect as SDLT April 2025, how it affects you. So residential, we basically focusing mainly on residential property rates, basically stamp duty rates for residential property. Obviously, you have things like, commercial property that may also be affected by this, but we're just focusing mainly on residential property, which is what the ordinary guy wants to know. So you usually pay stamp duty land tax on increasing proportions of the property price when you buy residential property, for example, a house or a flat. The amount you pay depends on when you bought the property, how much you paid for it, whether you are eligible for relief or an exemption. And so the reality was that first-time buyers had an exemption, obviously prior to April 2025, of £425,000. So therefore, if one was a first-time buyer and they were purchasing a property worth £424,000 or less, they were then exempted from tax, stamp duty, land tax. But this is all changing. So currently, as of April 2025, the rate at which first-time buyers are getting this relief is going to drop from £425,000 to £300,000. So you are going to pay a percentage on the £150,000 difference. And as we go along and obviously explore this video, you are going to get to know the rate that first-time buyers are going to be paying. So here we say rate for a single property. You pay SDLT at these rates if, after buying the property, it is the only residential property you own. You usually pay 5% on top of these rates if you own another residential property. And so, times are getting tougher and tougher to own an additional property. So in as much as one will attract these new stamp duty rates, they are also going to attract an additional 5% of the value of the property on top of these standard stamp duties that they have to, obviously the buyer have to pay. So this thing is getting a lot tougher and tougher. The reality is that one could say that it's not necessarily such a bad thing on the basis of it actually slows down how many times a person could own multiple properties, because we see that if these type of restrictions are not in place, it is known that one person somewhere in the northern part of England own about 600 properties in a particular county. And so this type of a situation with an additional 5% on top of the stamp duty rates that the person will be paying is surely a move to slow greedy individuals from acquiring many properties, whilst the masses may not be able to afford any of such properties. And so this is not necessarily a bad thing. But let's go into the stamp duty rate, the agenda for 2025 by the Labour government. There is that talk that they claim that the Tories left the coffers in such a bad state that they now have to come to you and I to pay for these things. So, in my opinion, they don't necessarily seem right. So, property or lease premium or transfer value, SDLT rates. So now, as of 2025 April, for up to £125,000 property, you will attract 0 rate stamp duty. And so I know somebody that in recent times completed a property, a flat purchase, which was obviously far away from London, and it came under this amount of 125,000, and therefore their stamp duty rate was 0. However, it was not the first. Basically it wasn't their first property, so therefore they then attracted a 5% stamp duty rate, whereas before they wouldn't have. And so for a small, obviously valued property, they ended up paying nearly £6,500, just even though the property was under £125,000, because it was their second home, they had to pay that 5%. But assuming that this person may have purchased a property, just for argument's sake, a property with a value of 675,000, they would have paid 5% on £675,000, and then an additional 5% for it being a second property. So as we see here, 0 to 125,000 is 0%. Then the next £125,000 to 250,000 is a rate of 2%, which is also decent if basically you are a first-time buyer. 2% is not a bad rate. It starts to creep up when you now have a threshold between 250,000 to 675,000 pounds. For this amount, you will pay 5%. So it says that it's 250,000 to 925,000 pounds. You pay 5% of the value of the property in stamp duty, land tax. Then the next thing, if the property then exceeds 925,000 pounds, then the person will be paying 10%. And then it goes on further to 1.5 million, which is 12%. Obviously, these rates have gone up since obviously pre-April 2025. You will notice that the thresholds for that time was different. Information you can get online. So this is the reality. What is the reality? The reality gives you it gives you an example of the sort of charges that you could be paying for stamp duty if you were to purchase a certain value of a property. So the reality is that, for example, in April 2025, if you were to buy a property for £295,000, obviously you wouldn't be able to use £295,000 to buy anything in London. Most likely will be outside London. Then your stamp duty land tax you owe will be calculated as follows. So for the first £125,000, your stamp duty rate is 0%, so the calculation is equal to 0. Then your next 125 up to well, basically I think £125,000, probably up to 250,000 is going to attract a stamp duty of 2%. So that you can see there, they've calculated that to be £2,500. And then after that, you now have a remaining £45,000, of which you are going to pay a stamp duty of 5%. And therefore, that is also calculated to be £2,250. If you join these two figures, your stamp duty rate for a £295,000 property is £4,750. Obviously, you can go on government website and use the SDLT calculator if you are in doubt and you want to know the rate at which you are going to be paying stamp duty if you buy a particular type of property. So leasehold properties, you pay stamp duty on the purchase price of the lease premium using the rate above. If the total rent over the life of the lease, known as the net present value, is more than the stamp duty threshold, currently 125,000, you will pay stamp duty rate at 1% on the portion over £125,000. This does not apply to existing assigned leases. You can work out how much stamp duty land tax you will pay for your residential leasing using HMRC. So it appears that if it's a leasehold, the conditions may be slightly different. You may be paying slightly less stamp duty if your purchase property is a leasehold. So the next one is first-time buyers, what this means to them. So if you're a first-time buyer or buying your first home, you can claim a discount relief if the property you buy is your first home. You are eligible if you and anyone else you are buying with are first-time buyers. You will pay no stamp duty up to £300,000. And so this is where, prior to April 2025, the rate would have been £425,000. But now, because of the changes brought in by the Labour government, this relief only goes up to 300,000. So somebody who was before buying for a 425,000 property, now they will be paying stamp duty on the that is the amount between 300,000 and 425,000, which is 125,000. They are going to be paying stamp duty on this amount. And as it seems here, it's a rate of 5% on the portion between 300,000 to £500,000. If the price is over 500,000, you cannot claim the relief. Follow the rules for people who have bought a home before. So once again, this does not really help the ordinary guy. The reason is simple. If you're buying a property in London, you will be lucky to get a 3-bedroom to be £500,000 or less. So most of the time they will be more than 500,000. Therefore, you lose the relief and you pay full stamp duty. So they make an example here for a first-time buyer. You are a first-time buyer and purchase a property of £500,000. The stamp duty land tax you owe will be calculated as follows. So it will be a 0% for up to £300,000, whereas before it would have been 425,000. So for 0 to 300,000, you pay a rate of 0%. Then the remaining 200,000, you will pay a rate of 5%, and that is equal to 10,000. So therefore, your stamp duty land tax will be equal to £10,000. Once again, go on government website and use the stamp duty land tax calculator to calculate if you are in doubt of the amount of your purchasing price. So then it goes on to talk about higher rates for additional property. So this is when, if you buy a second property, how the stamp duty affects you. You will usually have to pay 5% on top of the stamp duty land tax rate if buying a new residential property, which means you own more than one. Use the stamp duty land tax calculator or check the higher rates to work out how much tax you will pay if you are replacing your main residence. You will not pay the extra 5% stamp duty land tax if both of the following applies. So here there are some exemptions. So you may be buying your second property, but if these conditions apply, then you will not be paying the stamp duty land tax. So the first exemption is that if the property you are buying is replacing your main residence. So therefore, assuming that this new property that you're buying, you're moving into it, then that could be deemed as replacing your existing residence, and therefore you will not pay the stamp duty. But if you're not moving into that property, you will pay the stamp duty. Your previous main residence was sold within 36 months of completing your new purchase. If you have not sold your main residence on the day you complete your new purchase. And so here you are. If you were to have sold your main property or your main home 36 months before the completion of your new purchase, then the stamp duty land tax will not apply. And also, if you have sold your main residence on the day you completed your new purchase, so that as well, if you have sold your new home and you purchase today, then it will not apply to you. You have to pay higher rates. This is because you own two properties. If you are eligible for a refund of the higher rate of stamp duty land tax. So this is the additional property, what it means for 2025. So this is it. If you have any stories, if you've been caught up in these changes, if you think that this new rules or regulations from the new Labour Party being led by Sir Keir Starmer has made this decision, and it actually helps you for social mobility or help you in any way. And if you think this is putting more money in your pocket, then let us hear your views. It's a learning platform. Come in and say what you think. Share your experience and voice out your opinion. That is what this channel is all about. We are all learning. We are criticizing things that does not help the ordinary guy on the street, but disproportionately help the few, the fortunate few, or the privileged few. Then voice out your opinion. Thank you once again for watching this channel. We will revert back to the issue of Brexit in our next video, but because these changes are actually going to be happening this week, it was necessary to cut across or cut in to bring this video to you. So thank you for watching. See you again. Good night.